This episode of Just the Tip-Sters is sponsored by Clean Spa Bath and Body. That's clean with a K. Cleanspa.com. Clean Spa. Prepare to smell delicious.
From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's Just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
This call may be recorded for training purposes.
You've got a tip for Melissa, a repressed memory from years ago, a story you once heard around a campfire that sounds a lot like a cold case you just read about. What teen spirit actually smells like. Tell us about it by calling the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837, or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. We just might hear your tip on the podcast. And now here's your host, writing yet another love letter to Bill Curtis, despite the restraining order, Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell. Ixnay on the Urtiske. I told you to not bring that up.
You know, they are going to come knocking on the door again.
It's okay. Bill's worth it.
I guess so.
Bill is worth police harassment.
You know, last year sometime, I got a call from Bill Curtis Productions at my other job, at my full-time job, and they wanted to film at one of our properties, and I had to say no.
And I'm not sure I'll ever forgive you.
Well, it wasn't my decision.
Well, the fact that you had to bring down the hammer and say no made me want to cry a little bit, but I'm trying to move on and forgive you. I mean, that's what, a lot of my therapy work is about.
Oh, I see.
That kind of stuff. So yeah,
really
trying to get past it. And goddamn you are prescient, because today's case actually involves Dave Grohl from Nirvana.
Oh,
and I just kind of tangentially, but he probably knows exactly what teen spirit smells like. You know that was a deodorant, right?
No, I did not know that.
Oh.
So now I feel like that line was kind of stupid, but...
Well, no, it's perfect. It was
right.
There's a deodorant called Teen Spirit, and because teens apparently smell bad, and
oftentimes.
I thought it was a hilarious title for a song, and then when you find out it's about, lots of existential angst, I feel like the title was even more perfect for the song. So we'll get to the Dave Grohl part toward the end of this, but that was pretty prescient there with the old Nirvana tip of the hat at the beginning there, producer Mark. You never cease to amaze me.
Yeah, I had no idea that. Okay.
Except for the part where you hoard and steal every blanket or cover at night.
Well, now you're not going to start in on me on that again.
I am starting in. Last night I tried to prove to you I had zero quilt and blankie to cover me, and it's getting much warmer in Southern California, and at night I like to have something thin over me so I don't get killed by the Indians, because a sheet would stop an arrow.
Yeah,
or a hatchet.
We know the Apaches are on the move out here right now. We did have the room air conditioner on last night, so it was very nice and cool.
Yeah, and you had all the blankets. And first of all, you're lying on top of them doing the New York Times crossword puzzle, and I'm trying to pull them from underneath you, and I'm like, I have no covers. And you're like, you do. I don't have any over here. And I'm like, you don't even know.
Which is true.
It was such a lie. It was. I took a picture because what I had was about an inch over toward the middle of the bed and nothing over the side of the bed, and you had all of it. You do this very bizarre thing where you grasp them in your fucking giant mitts, and you twirl them around and wrap yourself up in them, and then I have no blanket. I don't, and I'm usually pretty warm.
That's it. We're setting up cameras.
So that's totally fine, because right now what I have done is I prepared a victim impact statement that I would like to read.
No, you're a victim impact statement. This is like, come on.
All right, I really don't have that. But
thank you.
I was really cold last night. I was really cold, and you're an asshole. Statement.
So okay, I'm not I'm a very nice person, and I don't steal the covers.
You know who's a really nice person?
Yeah.
Tipster Bridget, who, after I bitched about difficulty in finding Mountain Dew Kickstart Black Cherry, sends me a link immediately showing me that Amazon delivers them for as cheap, if not cheaper, than we would buy them at the store. And producer Mark doesn't have to put miles on his car trying to find my beverage of choice.
Not only that, it's not only is it's free shipping, so because we have the, what is it, Prime?
Prime.
Yeah, so it costs the same, and it's shipped in these. It's like a nuclear bomb would be shipped in something less protective than these. The cans are just ensconced in cardboard and cushion, and it's marvelous. So
It is marvelous, and Tipster Bridget has basically changed our lives, where we can become much more hermits, where we don't have to go out and forage. Shit just shows up on our front porch. I took a picture of the 3 boxes that were delivered on Friday on our front porch that had 6 cases of Mountain Dew Kickstart. If you subscribe and get X amount of boxes per month, you get like even 15% off. So it's even cheaper. And just so no one worries about our health, well, not Mark's because he doesn't drink this, but I do. I also ordered 3 cases of hint water. So we are trying to drink more water. So please don't worry that we're, just living off of Mountain Dew Kickstart.
Yeah, we're like the chain smoker, or Melissa's like the chain smoker who like takes a lot of vitamins in the morning and thinks that'll take care of it.
Why don't you shut up? Yes, I do. I take a handful of supplements like a maniac, but just working some stuff out, trying to get stuff in my body healthier. But I do have to say, full disclosure, I unfriended a vegan on Facebook this morning because she had no sense of humor. Which makes me
love you even more than I could I possibly tell you.
So she has no sense of humor. I really didn't know her. I'm not sure I've met her. She was a friend of a friend, and she posted a picture. If you're going to be vegan, you have to have a sense of humor. That's just it. It's just, that's the fucking way it goes. You can't. So she posts a picture of a really delicious looking bun, quite frankly. But in the middle of the bun is a carrot covered with like grilled onions or something. And it's like, she said, the plant-based community has been raving over the carrot hot dog, and I had to give it a try, and I was not disappointed. So a few other people were like, oh my God, really? Whatever. And I said, well, I'm disappointed looking at the picture, but you do you, boo. And she went to town on old evil omnivore Melissa, who, she was like, well, I'm disappointed that people eat animal parts in a bun.
Well.
And I thought, life's too short. Click.
Yeah, unfriend.
No one needs friends who just eat carrots in a bun.
I want to make it clear here. We are not against veganism.
I'm not. I'm a live and let live. No, I'm a live and let live person.
Exactly. But don't gimme. You gotta have a sense of humor.
Yeah, you gotta have a sense of humor.
If you want to joke to me about the breakfast burger I just had, fine, I can take it.
Right.
Let me have it.
You know why you could take it? Because you have strength in your body and a will to live.
Because I eat animal protein.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
You're able to fight back and put up with, you have a tougher skin.
Yeah, it had it had beef
in
it, and it had eggs in it, and it had cheese in it. And it was
breakfast burrito.
Then there was the breakfast burrito that had all of those things in it too.
Yeah. As opposed to carrot on a bun. So anyway, no one needs a friend like that. So it is important to keep friends if you have them. I'm getting my numbers going down lower and lower. I'm just unfriending people rapidly who just show me pictures of a carrot in a bun. But if you have friends, it's important that you stay in touch. So consider us your friends. Feel free to email us, call us. Email us at jttipsters@gmail.com. Call us at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837. If you have an idea for a story that you want us to cover, let us know. We would be glad to take a look at it. I've gotten some of the most interesting story ideas from the Tip-Sters, things I didn't know that existed, and am fascinated to find out about and learn about. So thank you for that. If you have time, you can go to our Patreon page, and you can contribute to the running of this show because we need to buy more Mountain Dew Kickstarts. I'm kidding. We'll just spend all of our money on carrots if you donate. And if you don't, we get it. It may not be in your budget. But
we'll dip the carrots in Mountain Dew Kickstart. But...
Oh my God, that's the only way I'd eat them. If they're dipped in Mountain Dew Kickstart and then they're like grilled, oh my gosh. Okay, now you got me. I'm there.
I think we've just invented the Mountain Dew Kickstart marinade.
Yes, it sounds incredible. I want to marinate everything in it. I want to marinate you in it and me. Let's just take a bath in it. So you can do something even more wonderful for us, which is go to Apple Podcasts and you can rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. You can tell all your friends who have ears and that might like true crime podcasts to check us out. That's a really big, wonderful deal for us. That's priceless. So thank you for all of that very much. This episode is sponsored by Clean Spa by Jennifer Hardaway. Clean Spa carries a full line of original bath and body products available in dozens of unique fragrances that Jennifer cultivates herself. In addition to their incredible scrubs, body washes, and moisturizers, Clean Spa features a full line of perfumes, oils, and colognes, including the Clean Spa Flight. It's a trio of perfume oils with fragrances you can mix and mingle to create your own personal palette for the day. And you can choose 3 of Clean Spa's multitude of scents, and they'll send your trio of perfumes in a handy flight case for easy travel. So it's not like a beer flight or a wine flight, but it is a Clean Spa scent flight that is spectacular. I am partial to anything with vanilla, and Jennifer knows that. So she is always changing and updating and creating new scents that you can find something for anyone, including yourself, that you're going to absolutely love. Clean with a K, cleanspa.com, and get 15% off your total order by entering promo code Tip-Sters at the checkout. Clean Spa, prepare to smell delicious. Sometimes you find out about a podcast that is really captivating and interesting, and you even start to adore the host. And that's what happened with me and True Crime Deadline. Matt Johnson is an anchor and reporter for a local Fox station in Los Angeles, and he is a tremendous true crime buff because he's seen it all, he's heard it all, he's covered it all. And here is a fantastic promo for his podcast.
From the Hollywood Hills to your earholes, this is True Crime Deadline.
I'm Matt Johnson, boots on the ground reporter and host of True Crime Deadline, the podcast that gives you a unique reporter's point of view from the yellow crime scene tape to the gavel in the courtroom. We paint a picture on True Crime Deadline with murder, mystery, and missing persons cases. My contacts grant you access to those case files with disturbing new details and exclusive interviews. Details might have you thinking, no, that didn't happen. They didn't do that, did they? And then there's the Oprah-inspired Where Are They Now? Binge these 30-minute Crime Bite episodes where you get your podcasts. Buckle up, investigators. You're on deadline.
For more information about the podcast, visit truecrimedeadline.com. Until next time.
Okay, so this episode is a unique and odd case. It's almost one of a kind. It had been done previously in the 70s in a small station in Florida where someone took their own life. But this is the case of our Bud Dwyer, Robert Bud Dwyer, who some of you may remember. I mean, I remember. Some of you probably weren't born, but it was January of 1987, and I was just getting out of college and had just gotten married to my first husband. It did not last long. I'm not married to more than one, just in case anyone's worried that I'm a bigamist and or polygamist or whatever. And producer Mark has to defend his right to be my husband. I was legally divorced. It was only a couple of years. And I remember seeing this and being so, I don't know, shocked. I guess that's the only word I can think of that everyone would be. But there is a wonderful documentary that did not come out until 2010, ironically, called An Honest Man, The Life of Our Bud Dwyer. And it was directed by Jim Dershberger, who was a Pennsylvania native. And there is a book with a very meaningful title, The Sins of Our Fathers. It's a profile of Pennsylvania Attorney General Leroy Zimmer and the historical explanation of the suicide of State Treasurer R. Bud Dwyer. And now that came out in 1988, just like not almost a year after he killed himself. And that is written by William Kiesling and Richard Carnes. And they are both in the documentary. They are interviewed in the documentary, An Honest Man, which you can get on Amazon Prime, by the way. And the most fascinating to me pop culture reference to this event is a song by the band Filter that I had no idea was about this. And if you want to talk about a song that's, there's a lot of interesting songs in pop culture that are written about events that we may or may not connect or we may or may not know about. And the songwriter has the inspiration to write about. But Richard Patrick, the lead singer of Filter, wrote this song in 1991. He was a Pennsylvania native also, and he had seen the event live on television. And, he was a little older than me. He was in his early 20s also at the time, and said he and his friends were watching it live, and there happened to be a big snowstorm in January, and so people were home from school, not a lot of people traveling. And he said it was like, wow, I guess we're all going to die. And not that when you're in your 20s, you don't think about that often, which you probably don't, but having something like that happen in front of you is probably a life-changing event. And he wrote the song, Hey Man, Nice Shot. And it is a fantastic screaming, rocking song. Didn't know it had to do with the suicide of Bud Dwyer until many years later. It's an interesting song, and their rendition of it that came out on their 1995 album is really a well done recording if you happen to like that kind of music, and I really do. So Robert Bud Dwyer was born on a small farm in Pennsylvania and had a lovely childhood. His parents both worked outside the home and they had the farm. So it was a working farm, but it wasn't the only thing they had that contributed to the household income. So he and his sister felt that they had a fantastic childhood. They didn't even know that, there wasn't something as idyllic as what they grew up with until they got to be older and discussed how great their childhood was. He, had been given some special things that, his parents hadn't been able to do. He had gotten to go to college, and he majored in poli-sci and accounting. And he really just wanted to be a teacher. He was like, this is what I'm born to do. I'm just born to be a teacher, and I want to teach accounting. He later had a teacher and a professor in college who he grew very close to and became his mentor. And he asked him to be his campaign manager. And his professor was like, campaign manager for what? And he's like, I'm gonna run for city council. And his campaign manager's like, you don't have shit. So his campaign manager professor went out and raised, a little bit of money for him. And a friend who's actually interviewed in the documentary said he gave him $5. That was his campaign contribution, was $5. So they didn't have enough money for TV ads or newspaper ads at the time in the late 60s, early 70s. But he was a big fan of matches and nail files. So he and his campaign manager would split up on a street. One would take one side, one would take the other. He'd give matches to the men and nail files to the women with his name on them. And he ended up winning, and he kept moving up in the world of, politics in Pennsylvania. And he kept proving himself to be worthy of people's trust in their votes. And this is the guy, no matter what happens later in his life, this is the guy who gave his sister such grief when they went to a child event. It was like a miniature dollhouse exhibit. And her son was 12, but was small for his age. And this is, Bud's nephew. And his sister got him in for the cheaper price of being 10 and under.
And he got upset at her for that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tortured her around the entire exhibit until she went back to the front gate and gave them the extra money for her son's admission because he's 12, not 10.
Okay, that's
right.
That is an honest man.
That's the guy.
Boy.
That's the guy we're talking about. So he comes in and he wants to win the war on waste in government. He's worked his way up now to become the state treasurer, and he really wants to cut down government waste. And he's so adverse to any kind of a campaign contribution that he would never look at a contributor list because he didn't want to become subconsciously influenced. So here's where sometimes being an honest man can probably cause you trouble, especially in the world of politics and government. He took a look at some travel vouchers that came to his office from the then Governor Thornburg. And the travel vouchers that were for the governor's wife and sons, Dwyer rejected them. Now, one of the travel vouchers was for Governor Thornburg's wife, Jenny, for her travel to an event. And the other vouchers were for his two sons who went to school in Massachusetts from Pennsylvania. So they were driven every day back and forth to school in Mass. And he rejected them and said that the governor has to pay for them himself. So in the early 1980s, Pennsylvania discovered its state workers had overpaid federal taxes due to errors in the state withholding. And there were many accounting firms that were competing for a multi-million-dollar contract to determine how to disperse the compensation for each employee. And our Bud Dwyer listened to many companies compete for the contract. And one such company, CTA from California, threw their hat in the ring. And John Torquato Jr. was the CEO and president of CTA. And he also happened to be the son of a mafia man from Pennsylvania who got lots of city and state contracts because of his mafia connections. So John Torquato Jr. was like, I am not my father. I am above board. And Bud Dwyer was very much about, I'm not going to punish the son for the sins of the father. Hence the title of the book written about his life, The Sins of the Father. Very, very interesting book. So these accounting firms are competing for this multi-million-dollar contract, and Bud Dwyer appoints CTA. Now, a tip arrives. None of this has even been put into place yet, but a tip arrives to Governor Thornburg saying that Bud Dwyer accepted a bribe of $300,000 from CTA to win the contract. Now, just so you know, no money was ever exchanged. No money ever exchanged hands. What happened was the governor did a forensic audit of CTA and found old computer transcripts where a agreement had been made between John Torquato Jr. and our Bud Dwyer to accept $300,000 if he won the contract. Now, Bud Dwyer just screamed from every rooftop, I did nothing wrong. I would never accept a bribe, a kickback. I guess you can call it something different. I don't really know how to describe it. And one of the things about the documentaries, they want, producer Mark always reminds me that documentaries have an agenda. And they like to think that they are in the middle, that you can decide for yourself if you think Bud Dwyer was guilty or not. But the series of events that happen after this are very upsetting in one way, and some of it understandable, but it's still a really difficult story, and it's a part of our history that is, you know, when a man ends their life in front of television cameras, possibly so that his family doesn't get cheated out of his pension that he's worked his whole life for. I don't know. It's a thing that, it's one of those things that's going to stick, that's always stuck with me. That's why I wanted to do this. It's always stuck with me. So the governor kicks into place a investigation by federal prosecutors to find out what they should charge Dwyer with, as well as a few other people, him agreeing to receive kickbacks in return for him to, you know, steer the contract for getting the state employees their pension back, you know, towards CTA. So the U.S. attorney indicted John Torquato Jr., his attorney William Smith, Smith's wife, Bob Asher, who was the former Republican Party chairman for the state of Pennsylvania, and Bud Dwyer. So in return for lighter sentences, Torquato and both of the Smiths pleaded guilty and testified on behalf of the federal government against Dwyer and Asher. So Dwyer maintains that he awarded CTA the contract on the basis of his task force recommendation, and yet this conflicted with the fact that Dwyer himself personally handled all the matters relating to the contract, 6 days prior to CTA finding out they were awarded the contract. Dwyer awarded the contract to CTA, despite having been informed by major Pennsylvania-based accounting firm, Young and Associates, that they could perform the, FICA recovery as fast as CTA. But he went ahead and went with the California company, even though John Torquato was a Harrisburg resident also. It wasn't just that they were a California company. There were some roots to Pennsylvania. So the U.S. Attorney, Jim West, he went after Dwyer and the others, even though he had to admit no money has really ever changed hands. Dwyer...
That's weird.
It is. This is why it's so complicated and layered and confusing. Dwyer did not get any kickbacks, and it was just recorded in CTA, computers that if they got the contract, that he would get the $300,000, and they did get the contract. But but no work had started yet until after Dwyer's death.
And Dwyer never agreed in any document to take the money, right?
Right.
Well, then that's crazy.
And they're saying he agreed to it, verbally, so they put it in their computer notes, and that's where it was found.
Oh, jeez.
So Dwyer's lawyer spoke to the prosecutor, the acting U.S. attorney, Jim West, who really seemed to be on a vendetta. He was just the acting U.S. attorney, and he never actually became the U.S. attorney. He's now a defense attorney, private practice. But he really seemed to have a vendetta against Bud Dwyer, like hang a nun in the courtyard. So he asked him if he would drop all the charges against Dwyer if Dwyer resigned as state treasurer. Now, Dwyer never agreed to this, and it didn't matter because U.S. Attorney West declined. He said, let Dwyer plead guilty to a single charge of bribe receiving, and that could have meant a maximum of 5 years imprisonment. But he also then had to resign as the treasurer and cooperate with the government's investigation. But Dwyer refused. He's like, no, take me to trial. I didn't do anything wrong. They went to trial. And at his trial, Dwyer did not take the stand. And his lawyer really didn't present any defense witnesses. I think they thought they had it in the bag. But the defense was curtailed by the prosecution because the case was limited to only those who had been charged. So he couldn't really bring character witnesses to court. It had to be only the people that were charged. So,
yeah, boy, that's...
Yeah, his hands were tied in every way, shape, or form, and I think he thought the judicial system would work for him. So on December 18th of 1986, he was found guilty on 11 counts of conspiracy, mail fraud, perjury, interstate transportation, and aid of racketeering. And he faced a sentence of up to 55 years imprisonment and a ugly number of $305,000 as a fine, making a point of the $300,000 that he would have gotten that he did not. So his sentencing was scheduled for January 23rd in 1987, and it was going to be performed by U.S. District Court Judge Malcolm Muir. Now, Muir is well known. He is Hang 'em High Muir, and he also seemed to have a very strong compass pointed directly at Bud Dwyer's, wallet and his life, and it turned out to be prophetic. So only one mail fraud charge was dismissed by Judge Muir. And one of the jurors, Carolyn Edwards, said it's really emotionally difficult to convict Bud Dwyer since he's a man of high integrity and he just made a mistake, is how she put it. So Bob Asher, who was Dwyer's co-defendant, was sentenced to 1 year in jail. And he actually later returned to politics, and he was a Republican National Committee person for Pennsylvania. So here's where some of these things may have contributed. I never want to blame the system. I never want to blame rules in place for someone taking their life. But Pennsylvania law stated that Bud Dwyer could not officially be removed from office until his sentencing in January. Given this, he stated that until his legal appeal was resolved, he would stay on as treasurer without pay. He could be under a leave of absence, that's fine, but he was not going to resign. So in the interim, the Treasury Department would put Deputy Treasurer Donald Johnson in the interim. So he worked really hard from December 18th when he was convicted until January 22nd when he ended his life. He, professed his innocence everywhere. He wrote a letter on December 23rd to then President Ronald Reagan asking for a presidential pardon. He asked Senator Arlen Specter to offer his support in getting a presidential pardon. The week of his sentencing, Pennsylvania State Attorney General Leroy Zimmerman, were investigating a provision in the Pennsylvania State Constitution where removal of a civil worker from office who has been convicted of a crime is self-executing, which is difficult to say. Thus, it means like an automatic upon that person's sentencing, they, are removed from office. And a decision confirming this constitutional point was expected on January 22nd, the day before his sentencing. So Bud Dwyer has a meeting in his home, January 15th. He says he wants to have a press conference. He talks with his press secretary. He talks with the deputy treasurer. They thought that he was going to call this press conference to resign. They just assumed that's what he was going to do. But he said, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to resign. I'm innocent. And I'm going to file every appeal I can to show that I'm innocent. So when his press secretary and the deputy treasurer left that meeting on the 15th, both of the men thought, if we actually pull this press conference together, he's going to resign. That's what he's going to do. He's going to resign. So Bud Dwyer finally gets a hold of Senator Arlen Specter on January 21st, 2 days before the sentencing is supposed to happen. And a Specter aide said that they talked for about 10 minutes. And he had sent, Arlen Specter a letter saying, can you help? Can you help me potentially get President Reagan to overturn this conviction or a presidential pardon? And he, asked for the senator to really give a big push. And Arlen Specter said, you know what, this is not realistic, only because the judicial process, including all of your appeals, have not run their course yet. So I think he probably felt after that conversation, I don't know what I have left. I don't know where I have left to go. what I'm going to do. So he says, all right, to his press secretary and the acting treasurer, look, set up a news conference on the 22nd at 10:30 a.m., and he wasn't going to tell him what he was going to discuss, because we know why he didn't want to tell him what he was going to discuss. So initially he said, let's set up a press conference, but there are people I don't want to be there. And these were people that he thought had written biased reports against him. And he, said, all right, fine, just let them all in. It doesn't matter. Let everyone in. So U.S. Attorney West even said, I think this is the appropriate thing for him to do under the circumstances. This would save everyone a lot of time and aggravation. Yeah, you have no idea, Attorney West. So Bud Dwyer writes a series of letters, notes. One of the more heartbreaking parts of the documentary is that the morning of the 22nd, there was a severe snowstorm, and his son Rob and his daughter Diane were still living at home with he and his wife Joanne, who he always, affectionately called JoJo. And he kissed his son goodbye and said, be safe out there, because he knew his son was going to school and his daughter was going to be home. And he came in and said, I love you, and gave her a kiss, and she was still asleep. And she had a card for him that, don't cry, that she had written, I love you and I believe in you. And she wanted to give it to him that day after the press conference, because she thought that he might be resigning also. And she never got the chance to give him the card because they had no idea what he had planned. So he starts by saying, a little note he left at home, I have enjoyed my life with JoJo so much, and the next 20 years or so would have been wonderful. This is going to be difficult, and I hope I can go through with it. And he does. He begins his press conference at 10:30, and he appears, nervous. He professes his innocence, and he has a 21-page prepared letter. And a lot of people sort of described it as like rambling, talking about the criminal justice system. He was told to not throw stones at Governor Thornburg in any sort of press conference, and he did. He singled out Thornburg. He singled out Attorney West, U.S. Attorney West. He singled out agents in the FBI. He singled out Judge Muir and other people for tarnishing his reputation and for what he called tarnishing the justice system. And he noticed after, quite a few minutes, some of the press is starting to pack up their cameras and go. And he says, to those of you who are putting your cameras away, I think you ought to stay, because we're not finished yet. So in the meantime, his press secretary is planning his own press conference later and saying, I just didn't want people to think I wrote that for him. I had to make it known that I was not aware of the content of his statement. I didn't want it, to be thought that I wrote that. But it turns out he doesn't need to have a press conference, because Bud Dwyer makes sure that his points are taken to his last breath. So he says, I'm on my last page now, and I don't have enough of these to pass out. It was the last page. And he did hand some things to his press secretary. I'll leave this here. You can make extra copies for people. He said, I thank the good Lord for giving me 47 years of exciting challenges, stimulating experiences, many happy occasions, and most of all, the finest wife and children any man could ever desire. And now my life has changed for no apparent reason. People who call and write are exasperated and feel helpless with me. They know I'm innocent and want to help. But in this nation, the world's greatest democracy, there's nothing they can do to prevent me from being punished for a crime they know I did not commit. Some who have called have said I'm the modern-day Job. Judge Muir is noted for his medieval sentences. I face a maximum sentence of 55 years in prison and a $305,000 fine for being innocent. Judge Muir has already told the press that he felt invigorated when we were found guilty, and he plans to imprison me as a deterrent to other public officials. But it wouldn't be a deterrent because every public official who knows me knows I'm innocent. It wouldn't be a legitimate punishment because I've done nothing wrong. Since I'm a victim of political persecution, my prison would simply be an American gulag. I ask that those that believe in me continue to extend friendship and prayer to my family, to work untiringly for the creation of a true justice system here in the United States, and to press on with the efforts to vindicate me, so that my family and their future families are not tainted by this injustice that has been perpetrated on me. So at that moment, he stops reading, and he pulls a .357 Magnum revolver out of a manila envelope. And the mood in the room changes, as one would imagine. People leave, and the people that stay try to dissuade him. Some of them approaching the podium and trying to grab the gun. And he says, leave the room if this is going to affect you. And don't come near me because this can hurt someone. And he's aiming it at the ceiling. And people are yelling, Bud, no, Bud, don't do this. And he puts the gun in his mouth and fires one shot. He collapses to the floor, and several news cameras who are recording the event found their way to make close-ups of him. They recorded everything. They focus on him. They capture close-up footage of the aftermath. He is sort of crumpled on the floor, and the amount of blood pouring from his mouth and his nose is overwhelming. If you've seen the video, it is one of the more awful things, because watching someone's life slip from them is something you can't unsee. You can find the video online, and I urge you to really think about it before you watch it, because you can't unsee it. And it is a really disturbing thing to see someone who was described, during this difficult time. Friends approached Joanna's wife and said, is he depressed? And she said, well, he might be down, but, he's not suicidal. I mean, he loves life too much. He doesn't even like to sleep. So sometimes you never know. However, there may have been other reasons that he did what he did, thinking it was a sacrifice for his family. He was transported to the hospital. He had left part of the notes for his family were organ donation cards, and the only thing they were able to harvest were his corneas, because by the time he got to the hospital, of course, he was past the time where the other organs could be usable. There were TV stations who stopped the footage right as he puts the gun toward his mouth. Some of them stopped the footage and ran the audio underneath it so you could hear. Some of them stopped it completely, freeze framed. We're talking 1987, so things were, a little bit different. And it was unfortunate that it was a snowstorm and a lot of kids were home from school. So when this was run live, lots of people saw it. And one station, WPVI in Philadelphia, rebroadcast the footage in its entirety, and their 5 o'clock and their 6 o'clock Action News broadcast without any kind of a warning.
Oh, that's despicable.
Yeah.
This footage, I still haven't watched it ever, because I don't want to subject myself to it, and I can't believe that they showed it without even warning anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. They said that they thought it was an important event about an important man.
Well, sure, but you don't have to show the whole thing.
No.
Oh, my God.
No, I understand. The operations manager said, by then everyone knew that he did it. There were children out of school already.
Good Lord.
Yeah. It was, a few of the stations who ran the footage were on, some national news shows asking why. And they were like, well, we think it's an important warning to show people.
About what?
I guess about not killing yourself. I don't know. I mean, I'm a little stunned, but it's hard. I can't get into their mindset. One of the things that really affected me is that a radio reporter, his name is Tony Romeo, he was standing just a few feet from Bud Dwyer, and he was so traumatized by what happened, he had to take a break from being in journalism. He got so depressed, he had to take time off work because, again, you can't unsee it. You can't unsee it. So Bud Dwyer's letters, he left to many people. He left one to Governor Bob Casey saying, Republican Governor Thornburg is really distrustful, and you should, look at him, and you're the kind of governor that I think will be great and that Pennsylvania needs in this time in our history. Bud Dwyer suggested to the incoming governor that he use his wife, Joanne, as the successor to his job as the treasurer. And she's very talented, personable, organized, and hardworking. And the governor did not take Dwyer's suggestion, but the day after, he put into office a Democrat named G. Davis Green, who was going to serve out Dwyer's term, but then stepped down at the end. But he actually won the next election and was also the treasurer of Pennsylvania for the following term. So the Federal Bureau of Investigation investigated Dwyer's claims about their impropriety. So they investigated themselves. And they ultimately found Dwyer's claims to be lacking in substance and specificity.
Well, there's a shock.
Yeah. So here could be a reason why he did this, not just as a grandstanding thing to do in front of a camera. Since he died in office, his widow, Joanne, was able to collect full survivor benefits of over $1.28 million. His pension, over a lifetime, it was the largest death benefit ever made by the state system. Now, if Bud Dwyer had been sentenced to the following day, there's a Pennsylvania state law that would have prohibited the payment of his state-funded pension benefits. So a spokesman for Bud Dwyer suggested he may have killed himself to preserve the pension benefits for his family. Their finances had been ruined by legal defense costs. And several other of his friends made statements saying he did this so that his family could have his pension. I imagine that would have been part of it. But I think he just didn't see his way clear that, he could have gone through appeals. It may have taken a long time, but he may have been able, like, his co-defendant, Bob Asher, spent a year in jail and went back into politics immediately and got reelected. I mean, if Marion Barry can be arrested 4 times for smoking crack and hiring hookers, I'm going to guess Bud Dwyer could have been able to clear his name. Maybe he felt he didn't have the time. I don't know. Maybe when you're an honest person and something sneaks up on you and you think, I can't live with this tarnishing my image. I don't know. But I can tell you that the song by Filter, Hey Man, Nice Shot, I just loved the song way before I knew what it was about. It's a very interesting song when you consider a rock band writing a song about the suicide of a public official. But the first verse is, I wish I would have met you, and now it's a little late. What you could have taught me, I could have saved some face. They think that your early ending was all wrong. For the most part, they're right, but look how they all got strong. That's why I say, hey man, nice shot. What a good shot, man. It's an interesting song. There is the fascinating documentary and the book, The Sins of Our Fathers. And Richard Patrick, the lead singer for the band Filter, And I said he wrote the song in 91. It wasn't released till 95. And Bud Dwyer killed himself in 87. So I guess some DJs in Seattle found out that the song was written in 91. And they said, oh, he wrote this about Kurt Cobain. And Richard Patrick's like, what? What are you talking? He's like, what did I do? I never wrote this song about Kurt Cobain. Finally, he just said it's a song about suicide. And that's all he would say. And several, influential DJs in Seattle were like, no, this is a song about Kurt Cobain. And Richard Patrick said, they just keep repeating it over and over again. And when you repeat something, whether or not it's true, it becomes truth to some people. So he then has to go and explain to Dave Grohl. I saw the raw footage of Bud Dwyer killing himself. I was 22. I live in the suburbs. We're talking 1987. There's no internet that you can see someone, who has died. You see this live on television and it dawns on you, we're all going to die. And yes, I had a morbid curiosity and I watched the whole thing and thought, wow, nice shot, man. And he writes the song. And he says to Dave Grohl, from the bottom of my heart, this was not about Kurt. And Dave Grohl was like, people kept calling me saying you wrote this about Kurt. And I was like, dude, stop making money off my friend. And then I heard you say what it was about. And I completely understand because people think I'm writing songs about Kurt and making money off of him. And I wrote all of my first Foo Fighters record while Kurt was still alive. So here Dave Grohl understands why someone writes a song about something else and how it gets misinterpreted. And I mean, Dave Grohl is one of those national treasures.
He sure is.
He really is. And, when you were a young person, if you were around during the grunge phase, and I fell madly in love, I remember exactly where I was the first time in 1990, maybe, when I heard, I think it was 1990, when I heard the song Smells Like Teen Spirit. I was in Cincinnati, Ohio, going to a hotel to pick up a comic. I managed a comedy club. And I was like, what is that? And it's, I loved Nirvana very much. And I will be honest, little quiet Dave Grohl behind the drum kit was not impressive at the time. I was way more fascinated by Chris Novoselic because he was 6'7", and I like tall dudes. I didn't like bass players so much, but I thought he was fascinating. And of course, I was madly in love with Kurt Cobain just because he was so different and interesting. And I'll be goddamned if when Kurt Cobain kills himself, if Dave Grohl doesn't come out of the shadows like a fucking dragon and he changes the way music is heard, the way it's interpreted. He plays all the instruments. He was the Foo Fighters. He recorded everything himself. And when he went on the road, picked amazing musicians to back him up. So I'm not saying that something good comes out of someone's death, but maybe someone comes out of the shadows. Who knows? Maybe Nirvana would have broken up just because of the self-destructive ways of Kurt Cobain. But, I don't want Kurt Cobain to be sacrificed for Dave Grohl to be a star. But Dave Grohl was probably going to be a star no matter what. I don't think nothing could have tarnished his shine. And I feel really bad that Bud Dwyer felt that he had to end his life potentially to save his family financially because they were broken. They loved him so much, and he doesn't even understand that they would have all lived together in their car if they could have kept him. That's the part that's heartbreaking, that him removing himself from this plane did not help his family live longer, be happier, feel comfortable. Money isn't everything. It brings you peace of mind, depending on who you are. But keeping you here is the important part. You being here is the priceless part. There's no price that's worth you being here. And this prayer for guidance and office that Bud Dwyer read is very prophetic. Can you hit that audio, producer Mark?
A Prayer for Guidance in Office by Herman S. Garst. Dear Lord, the people have elected me to speak for them in things of state. To thee I come for help. I shall be tempted by those persons whose God is gain. May I be true to commonwealth, self, and thee. Stand with me, Lord, each time I speak, when godless men would make a mockery of righteousness. At voting time, touch thou my lips, for I would not bring shame or fear to fellow men, nor cast dishonor on thy name.
So if you are having a bad time, if you are in a time of your life that you feel is karmically upsetting and you are depressed, please remember that you removing you is more than a ripple effect. When one of us is hurting, all of us is hurting. And we need you here. We need all of us here. And if you need someone to talk to, the suicide lifeline number is 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. And more cowbell.
And remember, if you'd like to become a patron of the podcast, just go to patreon.com/Just the Tipsters. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next time.